quorum here. Welcome to the Revenue Subcommittee meeting for March 2nd, 2022. Lovely to see everyone. We are going to be discussing, well, first of all, great job by the floor leaders on the bills we had on the floor this week, and it's pretty smooth sailing overall, which is good. So we have 3 bills for today, 2 to potentially vote on if the subcommittee so chooses, 1 to discuss. We also have a number of bills that we have asked the Appropriations Committee if we can move them because they're over the appropriations threshold. So we're waiting to hear back on that from on a number of bills. And so I'll, as soon as I get approval, I'll bring bills up for discussion in subcommittee. If there's any particular bill that any of you have questions about and, want to figure out where it is in the process, like feel free to circle back since we're only a couple weeks now from crossover, terrifyingly. Let's go in. Delegate Buckle, you looked very confused there for a second.
No, I just love the mellifluous tones of your voice. It entrances me sometimes. I'm just,
Oh, Lord.
particularly because one of my bills is on the list. So I'm like, wow.
So I'd like to special order House Bill 730. So. Well, why don't we start with House Bill 730? This is Economic Development, Maryland Innovation Initiative Program, qualifying donations. I have not seen any amendments on this bill. George, are you aware of any amendments? Okay, so as a reminder, what this bill does is it simply alters one of the qualifying thresholds in the innovation program to make it easier for schools with smaller endowments, less fundraising capacity to participate in the program. Innovation is a great program, but its uptake has been largely concentrated in some of our largest universities. So this is a benefit to some of the smaller rural schools, some of the HBCUs that don't quite have the same fiscal capacity. Any discussion or questions on this bill? Delegate Buckle, would you like to make a motion?
Yeah, I would move favorable on the bill and very much appreciate everyone's support. It's a good bill. It's something that came to us from Frostburg State and other universities. It doesn't apply just to them, obviously, and I think it will make a real impact long term in their ability, everybody's ability to access the program. So I move favorable.
I'll second that.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Any debate or discussion? All those in favor, please signify by raising your hands or saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, HB 730 passes unanimously. House Bill 791 is the legislation to further tweak the digital products definition for the purposes of the sales tax on digital goods. Again, George, I haven't seen amendments. Are there any amendments that you've seen on this? So it's unamended. So any questions or discussion on this bill? Okay, then I move favorable.
Second.
All right. All those in favor, please, just a reminder, we vote, but we don't, George, I'm correct, we don't actually record the roll call, so we'll just do a voice vote. I know not everybody's voting for this one, and that's fine. So all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand or saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
No.
So the vote is 5-2. The bill moves forward. And then House Bill 2.
Didn't say no, did he?
Long said no, and Polakovich Carr was a no. Buckle, you were yes.
I'm in favor.
So House Bill 252, Income Tax Return Preparation Assistance Program for Low-Income Families. This bill, well, I'll let the sponsor go ahead and remind everyone of what the bill does.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the bill, as introduced, aimed to basically get the earned income tax credit into the pockets of Marylanders who are currently eligible for the credit but not claiming it, either because they aren't filing a state tax return or because they weren't claiming it on their state tax return. Over the last several weeks, my staff and I have worked very closely with the Comptroller's office to work out a series of very extensive amendments that have been distributed to the subcommittee and that everyone, I think, I got from George last night. This is kind of the compromise with the comptroller's office of where they feel like they can implement this well. I think it's still true to what my goal was with the legislation. So the amendments are narrower in scope, or I should say the amended bill would be narrower in scope than what I brought in. It still is about getting the earned income tax credit to folks who aren't currently claiming it. However, instead of having the comptroller's office prepare actual tax returns for these people, instead the comptroller's office will be sending a very simplified form for these people to complete and send back and get their refund check. Along with that form, there would be like a cover letter of some sort that's going to basically explain what this is, actually estimate the amount of EITC refund that particular taxpayer would be receiving if they submit the form, and also notify them that they are potentially eligible for the federal EITC and that they should pursue that as well. So that's kind of the amendments in a nutshell.
And those amendments were sent out by George, I believe, to everyone. So everybody has a copy of them. The version that was sent out was the reprint version if the amendments are adopted. Delegate Plakovich-Carr or Mr. Hayes from the Comptroller's Office, do we have a sense of how these amendments might affect the fiscal note?
I would defer to the Comptroller's Office if they have any insights.
Okay.
This is Justin Hayes from the Comptroller's Office. I would anticipate that the fiscal note would be largely unaffected, but may come down, if anything, in costs for our agency, because as Delegate Plakovich-Carr stated, the administrative burdens do decrease as a result of these amendments. So I would have to confer with other experts on how it would affect the fiscal note, but I would expect it to go down, not up.
Okay. Can you try to ballpark if to what extent it would go down? I ask only because the fiscal note's large enough on this bill that I have to go through that process with appropriations to get approval to move it. So it'd be good to be able to tell them, hey, it's going to be, $100,000 cheaper than we thought, or whatever it is.
Not generally my bailiwick to make those type of pronunciations, but
Sure.
I can check with folks and get you something hopefully by the end of the day.
Okay. I appreciate that.
Sure.
Are there other questions from committee members?
I mean, just to clarify, Julie, so that was my only note on the bill. Like I like the intent of what you're trying to do to get people that are eligible to be able to participate. And that was my only note, is I didn't like the comptroller having to prepare the returns. I thought that would probably create a lot of logistical problems, maybe even some legal problems, frankly. So you've taken that out completely. So now they're just saying, hey, so how does that work logistically? Would this still be giving the EITC to people who didn't file a return? You're going to mail them out a form. You explain what the form is. They're going to fill the form out and say, give me the EITC. But at the federal level, in order to get the EITC, they have to file a return, right? So will that, if they just send the form back, will that create any kind of issues of, well, you didn't really file a tax return, so we're just sort of taking your word for it that you qualify for it, or how does that get verified?
Yeah, so in part of our conversations with the Comptroller's Office was particularly on that concern. So the universe of people who are going to be eligible right now are people who filed a federal return and then either didn't file a state return or filed both returns but didn't claim the EITC on the state return. There is the potential in the future, particularly depending on what happens at the federal level with the IRS, where the IRS might actually be able to provide information on people who have not filed a federal return and give that to the Comptroller's Office. This happened once before, back in 2009. And basically the IRS flagged several thousand Marylanders who were eligible for the EITC. And in that case, the Comptroller's Office could just act. And those people hadn't filed federal returns. Okay. That's not the situation we're in right now, but I'm hopeful that at some point in the future, the federal situation will be different.
So you're basically going to be like, these people, we have some verification. They've signed under penalty of perjury. They've either filed a federal return and just neglected to file Maryland's, but we already know what their income is. We can calculate it because it dovetails, or they filed both returns. Maybe they just did it through TurboTax or whatever and missed that they're eligible for the credit, and we'll tell them, hey, you're eligible, and hopefully that'll trigger them to do it normally, so to speak, in future years too.
Yes, okay. Exactly.
All right, that makes sense. Thank you.
Further questions from subcommittee members? So why don't we do this? Why don't we we'll go ahead and adopt the amendments on the bill, and then we'll hold the bill until we get the appropriate approval. George, can you talk with the chair about starting that process up on this? And I expect that we'll get approval on this one because it's a good bill, and Maggie likes the EITC. So, I'll move Delegate Palakovich-Carr's amendments.
Second.
Amendments have been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand or saying aye.
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 All of Julie, for a second, your hand disappeared in your background. I was like, you're not voting for your own amendments? The amendments are adopted, and we will then hold this bill. And with that, we are done, and you have 45 minutes to eat lunch before our bill hearing. I'll see you all in full committee.